A broke and ragged scholar sits reading by an oil lamp in the dead of night. He had gone out to advise the lords of the age, and after a few years of it, his travel money was gone, the fine sable coat on his back worn to rags, and he came home with nothing. His wife would not come down from her loom to greet him. His sister-in-law would not cook for him. His own parents would not speak to him. To everyone under that roof, he had come home a failure. The night wears on. His eyes will not stay open. His head keeps sinking toward the desk. So he takes an awl from the table and drives it into his own thigh. The blood runs all the way down to his heel. The pain jerks him awake. He wipes it off and goes back to his reading. A little over a year later, the same man passes through his hometown, wearing the Chancellor's seals of 6 kingdoms at his waist, his carriages stretched out in a column down the road. His parents, hearing he is coming, sweep the house and go 30 li out to meet him. His wife dares not look at him straight. The sister-in-law, who would not cook for him, kneels on the ground and crawls toward him on her belly, like a snake, to beg forgiveness. He has changed the shape of the entire known world. He holds not 1 inch of land and not 1 soldier. He has done it with the tongue that nearly let him starve. To tell the story of that tongue, we first have to be clear about the kind of age it was loosed upon. We are now in an age that has a name: the Warring States. Think back. When Confucius wandered from court to court, there were still over 100 states in the world, large and small. Now, barely a century later, they have swallowed one another down to 7: Qin, Chu, Qi, Yan, Zhao, Wei, and Han. The king of Zhou is still there, but he has become an ornament no one bothers to consult. Historians give these 2 centuries a name blunt to the point of menace: the Warring States. 7 kingdoms are still alive, and they are going to settle by war which one will be the last. Hold that span in your mind like a ruler, because we will be moving back and forth along it. It runs a little over 200 years, from the carving up of the old order down to the day one kingdom swallows the last of the others. Shangyang's reforms, last episode, stand near its beginning. The tongues of this episode come a generation after him. And everything still to come? The crippled strategist, the drowned poet, the iron gate of Zhao, falls somewhere along this same 200-year line, sliding toward its single violent end. And in the far west, 30 years after the death of Shangyang, the machine he built has grown its teeth. Qin sits behind the natural rampart of Mount Xiao and the Hangu Pass, like a predator crouched in the western doorway, watching 6 fat kingdoms to the east. The Hangu Pass. Remember this gate. Everything that follows turns on it. Either you bind the 6 kingdoms together outside it and wall the predator in, or you pry the gate open, 1 kingdom at a time. The man with the awl in his thigh was named Su Qin. He claimed to have studied under a reclusive master, known only as the Master of Ghost Valley. His first venture had been to the king of Qin, urging Qin to swallow the East, a strategy that would later be called the Horizontal Alliance. But Shangyang had only recently been torn apart by chariots. The king was sick to death of traveling persuaders, and he was sent away. 10 memorials he submitted, and not 1 strategy sold, which is how we arrive at the opening scene. Home treated as a failure, the awl in the thigh. A year later, he went out again, with the exact opposite pitch. This time, he did not go to Qin. He went knocking on the doors of the 6 eastern kingdoms, asking each the same question. Your 6 territories together are 5 times the size of Qin. Your armies together are 10 times its size. You were one body once. Why bow and serve Qin one at a time, handing it your land piece by piece? He began in the northernmost kingdom, Yan, and won its king over. Then Zhao, Han, Wei, Qi, working his way south, and finally Chu. Like threading beads, he strung the 6 kingdoms onto a single line, and this north to south line was called the Vertical Alliance. The 6 bound themselves into a league against Qin, and Su Qin himself wore the chancellor's seals of all 6, the head of the whole pact. For the 15 years that followed, it is said, the armies of Qin did not dare set foot beyond the Hangu Pass. A man who had once not been able to feed himself had talked a predator back into its cage. In roughly the same years, at the other end of the earth, the city of Athens had its own men who changed their fortunes with the tongue. The most famous of them was Demosthenes. Day after day he practiced speaking against the sea with pebbles in his mouth, all to persuade the Athenians to stand together against a rising power to their north, Macedon, and its king Philip. We met Philip last episode, the man who forged a people of hillmen into the strongest army of the age. But here, east and west fork apart, and the fork is not in the skill, it is in who was listening. Demosthenes stood before an assembly of citizens in the open, and his task was to move thousands of free men to act as one. If he failed, they voted him down. Su Qin and Zhang Yi stood in the throne rooms of absolute monarchs, where no vote was taken, and a single man's whim sealed the fate of millions. One art was bent toward persuading a city. The other was bent toward working a king. Persuading citizens or working kings. That fork would run on for 2,000 years. No sooner had Su Qin's vertical alliance locked Qin in than someone inside the gate set to prying it apart. This man, it is said, had studied under the very same master of Ghost Valley, a junior fellow student. His name was Zhang Yi. To tell the story of Zhang Yi, you have to begin with the beating he took. Before he made his name, Zhang Yi was destitute and served for a time as a retainer in the household of the Chancellor of Chu. At a banquet, the Chancellor lost a jade disc, and the others all said, "Zhang Yi is poor and of low character. He must have stolen it." They seized him and beat him with hundreds of strokes of the rod until he was broken and bleeding. He never confessed, and in the end they let him go. Home again, his wife, half in grief and half in reproach, said, "If you didn't read books and go off persuading lords, would you ever suffer humiliation like this?" Zhang Yi did not answer the question. He opened his mouth and asked her, "Look, is my tongue still there?" His wife, caught between anger and laughter, said, "It's still there." "Good enough," said Zhang Yi. As long as that tongue was still there, his entire capital was intact. He went west into Qin on the strength of it. That tongue, beaten but never lost. And the work he set out to do was the exact reverse of Su Qin's. Where Su Qin had bound the 6 into a vertical line, Zhang Yi would untie that line from the middle, strand by strand, and turn the 6 kingdoms around to court Qin one by one. This strategy was called the horizontal alliance. The cruelest stroke of the horizontal alliance, and the dirtiest, was played on Chu. At the time, Chu and Qi were the most important pair of partners holding the vertical alliance together. Zhang Yi came to Chu and told King Huai, "If your majesty will break with Qi, Qin will present you with 600 li of land in the region of Shang." 600 li for nothing. King Huai was overjoyed. Against the fierce objections of his minister Chen Zhen, he broke with Qi at once, and even sent men to the Qi border to curse the king of Qi by name, burning that bridge to ash. Then he happily sent an envoy back with Zhang Yi to take possession of the land. The moment Zhang Yi reached Qin, he pretended to fall from his carriage and took to his sickbed, absent from court for 3 months running. King Huai assumed his break with Qi had not been thorough enough, and went so far as to send men all the way to Qi to curse its king again. Qi, enraged, turned instead and allied itself with Qin. By now, Chu and Qi were sworn enemies, and Zhang Yi's illness recovered. He received the Chu envoy at his leisure and said, "Why have you still not gone to take your land? From here to there, 6 li." The envoy was stunned. "I was sent to receive 600 li, not 6. Zhang Yi said, "A small man like me, where would I get 600 li? I spoke of 6 li from my own fief." Only then did King Huai understand he had been played by a tongue. In a fury, he sent his army against Qin. But Qi now stood on Qin's side, and Chu, fighting alone, was beaten twice, lost 80,000 men, and ceded the land of Hanzhong on top of it. 80,000. The fathers and sons of the Han Valley, called up to die for a strip of land that had never existed outside one man's sentence. Zhang Yi had promised 600 li, and delivered 6. The difference was paid in graves. 80,000, the fathers and sons of the Han Valley, called up to die for a strip of land that had never existed outside one man's sentence. Zhang Yi had promised 600 li, and delivered 6. The difference was paid in graves. The vital strength of a great kingdom hollowed out by a tongue. Not a single blade drawn. Every blade was one King Huai himself, pulled out and turned on his own country. This is the one thing this episode has to teach, and it is said only once. Su Qin showed the 6 kingdoms how much force a single tongue can bind together. Zhang Yi showed them how solid an alliance a single tongue can take apart. The truly frightening thing about this art was never which side was the cleverer. It was that once an age begins to believe language is a weapon, the first thing to die is good faith. Chu played the most cruelly of all, wrote the debt down and never forgot it. Chu had been the greatest kingdom of the south, vast in land and people, and it had been toyed with again and again by Qin's tongues, ceding territory, losing armies, its very king dying at last a captive in Qin. That was an injury the people of Chu could not swallow. From that time on, a bitter, ferocious saying began to pass through the lanes and markets of the Chu country. Though only 3 households remain in Chu, the one to destroy Qin will be a man of Chu. Remember that line? for now it is only the muttering of a beaten people, passed mouth to mouth in the dark. It will outlast the men who first spoke it, and their sons, and their sons' sons. And almost exactly 100 years from now, when Qin's palaces are finally burning, the man who set the torch will be from Chu, and so will the man who takes the throne after him. The endings of the two tongues were not good ones. Suqin was later attacked in Qi and lay dying of his wounds. With his last breath, he offered the king of Qi one final scheme. When I am dead, tear my body apart in public on the charge that Suqin was a spy sent by Yan, and the man who stabbed me will step forward to claim the reward. That is how you take him. The king did it, and the assassin was duly flushed out. A man who had lived his whole life by calculation had folded even his own death into the calculation. As for Zhang Yi, when King Hui of Qin died, the new king did not like him, and the enemies he had made over the years came rushing back. He talked his way into one last escape, left Qin, and was dead within the year. The vertical and horizontal alliances faded from the stage along with the two tongues that had made them. But the gate they had pried at would never close again. From here on, the Hangu Pass swung wider and wider, and no one would ever again hold Qin's eastward march at bay, with nothing but words. Of all the kingdoms deceived by Zhang Yi, and pressed step by step into the corner by Qin, Chu was the most deeply wounded. And in that sinking kingdom of Chu, there was a man who watched the country he loved most walk toward the abyss. He was no persuader. He did not live by his tongue. He could not change a single battle, nor talk a single king into anything. He could only write poems. But before we reach him, there is another man to meet first. One who sat in a prisoner's cart, with his legs maimed beneath him, and from 100 li away killed the strongest general in the world.